Tonight, the Queen's final journey from Buckingham Palace, the royals shoulder to shoulder as the world watches. London's long goodbye, thousands queuing for kilometres with a guard in a moment of drama. Breaking news on a teenage road tragedy in Melbourne's north. Millions for hospitals in health cash splashes from both sides as Daniel Andrews hits election mode. Seniors fight back, taking on an armed bandit. And the AFL finals teams revealed first as Pies fans go to extremes to get to Sydney.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. Londoners in their thousands are lining up tonight in queues more than 3 kilometres long in a historic tribute to the Queen. They're waiting for up to 7 hours to pay their last respects after King Charles and senior royals escorted the monarch's casket from Buckingham Palace to Westminster in a solemn ceremony watched by the world.
The end of an era in empire. The Queen leaves her palace, never to return. If there were any doubts, any disbelief about the events of the last week, today's haunting soundtrack, Beethoven's Funeral March, minute guns in the parks nearby, and Big Ben tolling across the capital. Reminders, Her Majesty is gone. Her nation watching, weeping. The imperial state crown placed upon Her Majesty's head at her coronation, dazzling in the sun. As the procession turned onto the Mall, the royal road, its tarmac like a red carpet, this farewell fit for a queen. Even Heathrow cancelled flights to keep the sky quiet. This is how Britain honours a lifetime of service. Draped in the royal standard, the Queen's lead-lined coffin of rare English oak at a precise pace of 75 steps per minute. A battalion of Grenadier Guards escorted the Queen and her family, the King, his sister and 2 brothers. Behind, Elizabeth's 3 adult grandsons, Peter Phillips, Princes William and Harry. His mind likely painfully skipping back 25 years when he and his brother followed their mother's coffin down this same road. Now, it's his beloved granny he must watch over in public view. This family's private grieving is over. Today they shared this nation's Queen with her people. This bustling city of 9 million people, this historic capital, brought to a standstill as Londoners begin the process of letting their Queen go. The coffin of the 96-year-old monarch carried by 8 Grenadier Guards.
Barra party, prepare to turn. Turn.
8 young men bearing the woman they called Company Commander and Queen. Into Westminster Hall, passing Meghan, the Countess of Wessex, the Princess of Wales, and the Queen Consort. To to the catafalque, last occupied by the Queen Mother. 20 years later, a queen whose reign may well be unmatched for centuries lies in state.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
These rituals where the church, military, parliament and family intersect the way the Queen wanted this to happen. Her royal wishes granted, right to the end.
And Hugh Whitfeld joins us now from outside Buckingham Palace. Hugh, such a solemn and symbolic day. This really is a changing of the guard for the royal family.
Peter, this was the majestic farewell befitting a monarch. We're still days away from the state funeral, but for many of those patiently waiting to see Her Majesty's coffin pass by, this was their chance to acknowledge 7 decades of service from a woman many people felt like was their own grandmother. The royal standard has now been lowered from the flagpole above Buckingham Palace here, replaced with the Union Jack at half-mast, an indication the sovereign is not in residence. The King has driven himself, along with the Queen Consort, to Highgrove, their residence in rural Gloucestershire. A chance, a day to take a breather, perhaps. Today marks a week since his mother's death, and he took on the great weight of the crown. Peter.
Hugh Whitfeld in London, thank you. It's estimated that 750,000 people will file past the Queen's coffin over the 4 days Her Majesty lies in state. As Chris Reason reports, the steady procession through Westminster Hall is silent and constant, marred only by the dramatic collapse of one of the ceremonial guards.
They are lining up for hours, ready to wait days, queuing for the Queen. There's no age limit, no ticket price. All they have to pay is their respects.
It means being British. I think it's very important to be a citizen here and to pay respects to somebody that's meant so much to so many people.
From the moment the Queen's coffin appeared yesterday, a reality sank in for so many. An era was over, and they wanted to say goodbye.
For the tens of thousands who came here today, this will be an unforgettable, profoundly moving experience. It will be the same for the hundreds of thousands who see her lying in state. There will simply never be another moment like this in our lifetimes.
Once the procession was finished, the crowds here moved here and kept growing, with warnings of an 8-kilometre queue and a 30-hour wait. But the British are good at queues.
So that we could come and pay respects to the Queen and thank her for all that she's done for us.
Australians too, though, happy to wait.
Almost a second mother. I think she's, you've got your mother, you feel the same way about, you don't know her, but you feel you know her.
And this is what respect looks like. The faces of a nation in grief. Old, young, very young, filing through Westminster Hall. Absolute silence except for the shuffling of feet and the gentle sobbing of mourners. Some bow, others salute. Best behaviour. No one needs reminding of the protocols here. The Queen's coffin is draped with the royal standard, flowers and her imperial state crown. 3,000 diamonds, rubies, sapphires. The Queen's Honour Guard provides the pageantry and protection. They are on 6-hour shifts, 20 minutes a time. Too much for one older member of the Royal Company of Archers. Falling hard, out cold, help rushed in as the live stream cuts away. Westminster officials also granted permission for 7 News to follow the crowds in. No cameras, water or food, just a notebook.
Anything else we need to know? Is anything else that's about it?
No, that's it.
The bags will be pretty small.
We had 30 minutes to wander inside with the public and feel the weight of the history happening around us.
The first thing you notice is the complete silence in the hall, and then the sheer pageantry of the moment. The honour guards stand absolutely still, their heads bowed, protecting their queen and displaying the sort of composure that many of the public around them simply could not match. So many walk out of here in tears.
An estimated 750,000 people will pass through over 4 days, 5 nights, 23 hours a day. The doors will close just hours before Her Majesty's funeral. In London, Chris Reason, 7 News.
And authorities are now considering extending the route of Queen Elizabeth's funeral procession to allow more people to say goodbye. The size of the crowd joining the queue at Westminster is obviously bigger than expected.
All night and all day, an endless procession waiting to say goodbye.
We couldn't not. It's the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
A magnificent person. It's like incredible, and I just want to see her for a last time.
London at a standstill and standing still as a final mark of respect.
It's everybody's grandma. To me, she's like my second mother.
As darkness set in, so did the rain.
Even in the tent, everything was very damp and moist.
Amanda Drake far from the comfort of her Sydney home.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and she served her entire life to us. If it's just about staying outside one night in the drizzling rain, we can cope with that.
It was typical British weather, but it's turned more to Aussie weather now, I'd say, so the rain's sort of gone and it's meant to be really when she's come home.
At the front of the queue, Vanessa Nathakumaran. We spoke to her when she arrived Monday night.
To pay our last respect to the great lady.
40 hours later,
it's just a few hours more.
Worthwhile to be the first of hundreds of thousands through the door, from the elderly to the very young, each with their own reason to come.
This is the only monarch I've known for the whole 10 years of my life.
8-year-old Louis Jenkinson came prepared for the expected 30-hour wait.
70 years, that's more than the 50-year period where we burnt through 4 monarchs.
While Duncan Razor dusted off his old uniform and shined his shoes to honour his Commander-in-Chief.
It did feel slightly strange last night, thinking that this is to be the last time, and I guess making sure it was extra perfect.
Even in death, the Queen is a uniting force. Mourners coming together, sharing food and water, blankets and tents, standing shoulder to shoulder for hours, even days, to remember a woman and a moment they'll never forget.
Londoners sharing their memories, a former High Court judge knighted by Elizabeth II.
In those days, you went to the Queen, to Buckingham Palace, you had an interview with the Queen for 20 minutes, and during the course of which you knelt down, she put the sword over your shoulder and said, "Arise, Sir Stanley."
From a knight to a bishop, both honouring a queen.
Archbishop, why have you decided to come down here this afternoon?
We're making our way to Westminster Hall, as you can see, slightly slowly, but that's what we're doing.
And it was important for you to thank these people on the way?
Of course it is, because they're doing a most amazing thing by being here.
In London, Amelia Brace, 7 News.
And the line of mourners now stretches for more than 4 kilometres. Sarah Greenalch is there this evening. Sarah, how fast is that queue moving?
Hey Rob, it's Todd. I'm with Sarah. Can you speak to her please? I'm not sure if we've got the comms.
So, apologies there, we're having communication problems with Sarah, so we will move on. And 2 police officers have been charged after firing shots at a car in central Victoria. Cameron Bowe joins us now, and Cameron, this follows a 2-year investigation.
Mitch, the shooting took place in June 2020 at Elphingston, south of Bendigo. Police had attempted to intercept the car on the Calder Freeway. At the time, it was claimed that the vehicle was driven at the police officers, who then fired at the vehicle. The driver and a passenger were hit. They suffered minor injuries. Now, 2 police officers have been charged with conduct endangering life and conduct endangering serious injury. They've been suspended without pay to front court in November, Mitch.
Cameron Bowe at Police Headquarters, thank you. Daniel Andrews and Matthew Guy are going head-to-head with big spending health announcements. Labor's pledging money for specialist paramedics to treat Victorians in their homes.
The Premier in election mode.
G'day, how are you?
Good, how are you? Rolling out a new slogan and a health announcement to match.
In an Australian first, a re-elected Andrews government will provide 25 paramedic practitioners. This is a $20 million investment.
Someone might have had gastro for 4 days and a normal paramedic crew would have to transport that patient into an emergency department. A paramedic practitioner can actually administer that treatment in the patient's home.
The program has been successful in the UK. If elected, they'd be on the road by 2026.
The first tranche of paramedic practitioners will have a particular focus on servicing communities in rural and regional Victoria.
The Premier made today's announcement on the Bass Coast because he plans to splash election cash here. A re-elected Andrews government will spend $290 million on stage 2 of the Wonthaggi Hospital.
This will be completed by 2027.
It will boost capacity by 64 beds and includes a birthing unit.
Who'd believe this guy now today that he's going to do something in Wonthaggi? It's just more spin, it's more lies.
Matthew Guy made his own hospital announcement, pledging $60 million to the Mansfield Hospital. The upgrade includes 25 beds, a 5-bay urgent care centre and a maternity unit.
I'm going to take every cent out of the Cheltenham to Box Hill rail tunnel and I'm going to put it into health where it's needed the most.
Chanel Bella, 7 News.
Now to breaking news, and a 13-year-old boy has been hit by a car north of Melbourne. Jade Vincent has the latest from police. And Jade, this is just unfolding now.
Mitch, it happened a short time ago in Wallen. Police have just confirmed the young boy has tragically died in what appears to be a terrible accident that's occurred in the driveway of a home on Bannon Street. Paramedics were called just before 5 o'clock this evening, responding to a teenage male patient who'd been hit by a car. They treated the boy at the scene, but sadly he could not be revived. That Ford sedan remains in the middle of the residential street where ambulance members, police, fire crews and SES are all currently on scene. Investigations are underway into the cause of this devastating incident. It's understood no one was behind the wheel at the time. Mitch.
Jade Vincent in the newsroom, thank you. Now to brighter news, and the Magpie Army is going to extremes to get to Sydney for the preliminary final. Emma O'Sullivan is with the cheer squad, and Emma, there's a Magpie migration to the SCG.
Mitch, it's happening any way they can. They've chartered planes and buses. For some, it will be a marathon 10-hour road trip. Here tonight, the Collingwood cheer squad is putting the finishing touches on the banner. They can't reveal anything about its message, but they're going in confident.
What's the price of pie passion?
Go Pies!
The inflated cost of a flight to Sydney.
$2,000 for two.
It's costing us about $1,000 each to get up there.
So for 3 of you, that's $3,000.
Yes, it is, excluding accommodation too.
We paid the big bucks. Collingwood's worth every penny.
But Collingwood fanatic Pat Lamana beat airline price gouging by hiring a private jet, sadly in Swan's colours, then calling Magpie mates.
This holds 50 people and it's booked right out and within a few hours.
The end result?
It's roughly about $600 a head, which is probably a third of what the major airlines are charging.
Go Pies! Let's bring it home.
But most desperate, 280 cheer squad members in 5 buses leave Southern Cross Station 1 a.m. Saturday, arrive in Sydney around midday, march to the SCG together to watch the game, then get back on the buses at 11 p.m, arriving back in Melbourne at 9 a.m. Sunday.
I don't know if we're going to get much sleep, but yeah, loud and proud. But I'm expecting it's going to be a blast.
And the fans who are going to Sydney promise they'll be much louder than their Swans counterparts, even though they'll be vastly outnumbered.
There might be 10,000 of us, but we'll be as loud as their 40,000. Yeah, we'll be bringing it, don't worry.
Go the Pies!
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
That is good to hear. Sport is next with Tim Watson. And Tim, we've got the teams for the big prelim finals.
We have, Mitch, and all the big names will be out there this weekend. Mitch Cleary joins us with the details. Mitch, the Cats are sticking with a much maligned ruckman.
Well, Tim, the Cats had debated a ruck swap, but Reece Stanley has got the nod. He'll play tomorrow night against Brisbane. Tom Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron also named after quiet weeks on the training track. At the Lions, Joe Danaher is back, as is Oscar McInerney. Goes out of the side. Joe Danaher back, Oscar McInerney too. Darcy Fort and Tom Fullerton go out of that team. At the Pies, they're unchanged. Braden Maynard, Jordan Nagoi and Brodie Myercheck in for that side. The Swans also with an unchanged lineup from that win in the qualifying final. Ollie Florence given the green light. Tim?
Thanks, Mitch. A lot going on there. Also, a testy Cats coach says past results don't matter as Geelong and Brisbane prepare to renew hostilities and the Dogs go back to the future, throwing a lifeline to our retired key defender. And Mitch will have all the latest from Collingwood and Sydney. Both camps expecting Buddy Franklin to bounce back this weekend, which is not good news for your Pies.
No, it's not, Tim, but you expect it, I think. Thank you very much. We'll see you a bit later. Two seniors have risked their lives to save their business. Next, see how they took on a thief armed with a knife in Collingwood. Also, why there's new pressure on interest rates as shares bounce back. A historic submarine at Western Port Bay preparing for a final voyage. Later, help for parents heading into the school holidays, the freebies to keep children busy.
And Friday brings a burst of wet weather. Now it clears later. I'll let you know what that means for the footy soon in 7 News.
A couple has risked their lives to fight off an armed ice addict as he robbed their Collingwood convenience store. The thief has now been jailed after dobbing himself in to police.
An armed robber thinking this will be a quick cash grab is sorely mistaken. As he pulls out a kitchen knife and threatens the shop owner behind the register, "I'll kill you if you don't give me the money." The 68-year-old woman is quick to counterattack. Pressing the duress alarm button, she arms herself with scissors in self-defence, striking the bandit as he rips the till out. Her 67-year-old husband tries to fight the thief off too, wrestling him while being repeatedly slashed by the knife. The thief manages to grab cash as the pair struggle through the convenience store before he runs off. Struck by remorse the next day, Sean James Taylor called 000, telling the operator he'd done something stupid. The 43-year-old ice addict says the violent armed robbery at this Collingwood convenience store was an act of desperation for drug money. Customers witnessed the 45 seconds of terror Taylor waged in the store, leaving the shop owner with stab wounds. Sean Taylor was jailed for 3 years and 3 months. Jade Vincent, 7 News.
A 14-year-old riding a motorbike has crashed into a car at Werribee. The car then hit a pole and caught fire, but the driver wasn't injured. The teenager from Melton West was taken to hospital with serious injuries. The World Health Organization has given its strongest indication yet that COVID could soon be a thing of the past.
We have never been in a better position to end the pandemic. We're not there yet.
Global deaths are at the lowest point since March 2020, with just over 11,000 reported in the last week worldwide. Mortgage holders are in for worse than expected interest rate pain as the Reserve Bank struggles to contain inflation. Unemployment has risen slightly, while the stock market has rebounded after a turbulent 24 hours.
After billions were lost yesterday, the market found its feet today. The ASX 200 relatively steady, up 0.22%. Its Wednesday fall followed Wall Street's plunge after signs US inflation is worse than feared, needing a massive interest rate hike. And experts say Australia's Reserve Bank is watching.
We think they are influenced by overseas trends. So, we think that they are going to have to hike by another 50 basis points.
That's another 0.5% rise next month, and another, he predicts, before year's end. And while Australia's jobless rate increased slightly today to 3.5%, some say it's not enough to deter the Reserve from extra hikes.
The numbers that we've seen for unemployment more or less in line with economist and market expectations.
As rates rise into next year, many predict a soft landing ahead, but not everyone.
The RBA is trying to cool things without overcooling. It's a tricky task. We think, unfortunately, there's a very real chance that we do slide into recession.
As the review into how the Reserve Bank operates reveals, it'll be asking if there are alternatives to the way it targets inflation, whether the board needs more policy experts and fewer business people making rates decisions, and whether their votes on rates should be made public.
It's clear that the Reserve Bank has made some errors in the recent past, and people have paid a real price for that.
That review will provide some answers next March, but the Reserve Bank Governor will have to deliver them much sooner when he's questioned by MPs in Canberra tomorrow. Paul Kadak, 7 News.
Volunteers fear a 20-year campaign to save a historic submarine in Western Port Bay has failed. They've cared for it and tried to get funds to turn it into a floating museum. But now the state and federal governments consider it a danger to the environment and it'll be moved over the next few days. The volunteers fear it will be broken up and sold as scrap. A car lover has guided police to his prized wheels after the $250,000 sports car was stolen from Melbourne's north. Next, how he helped the Air Wing catch a thief on the run. Also, the rogue real estate agent who fleeced unsuspecting customers of thousands. A billionaire's staggering gift to protect the planet. And cruise ships cruise back into Melbourne at last in a travel surge. A thief accused of stealing a $250,000 supercar has been brought undone by a hidden GPS tracker. The whole episode was caught on camera by police as they were getting live updates on his whereabouts.
Caught on the roadside, a stolen ute, a stolen trailer and $250,000 supercar, and very little time for a getaway. It wasn't fast, but it was furious.
Heard a big bang when I opened the door.
The dramatic chase ended in the Conan's front yard. Somehow, the imported Nissan Skyline escaped with barely a scratch.
My first reaction was, it's gone straight through the front of the house.
The thief used a stolen Ford Territory to hook up the trailer carrying the Skyline in Diamond Creek. A GPS tracker on the car then pinged its owner 10 kilometres away in Nutfield, prompting a call to police. An air and ground police chase that came to a crashing end in Hurstbridge. He then led police on a foot chase along a train track for a few kilometres before giving up, putting his hands behind his head until police arrived and arresting him.
Cops were jumping the fence. It was quite traumatic.
The driver went straight through this T intersection without giving way, narrowly missing cars and ploughing right through this fence.
A lady had to put on the brake and stop for this car and they sideswiped the cop car.
The 20-year-old has been charged with multiple offences. Cassie Zervos, 7 News.
A crooked real estate agent is facing up to 20 years behind bars for preying on vulnerable people. Cherie Baker used fake documents to help her customers obtain loans they could barely afford.
She reaped the rewards of real estate.
Heaps of houses and heaps of money.
By preying on the vulnerable.
Is there anything you'd like to say to your victims?
Former real estate agent Cherie Becker has been found guilty of swindling vulnerable home buyers who were desperate to get a loan.
Many of the purchasers didn't speak English and didn't really understand the contracts they were signing. The buyers ended up with loans they couldn't pay and were in a position, if they couldn't get help or if they couldn't get a lot of money knocked off that mortgage, they were going to lose these homes that they thought that they'd bought.
2 of Becker's co-accused have already been sentenced. She remains on bail as a judge considers her punishment.
This is really unethical conduct. It doesn't appear that Becker has shown any remorse at all for what she's done or has any understanding of what she's done to these people.
Cherie Becker's defence team have requested she's spared any jail time. The court hearing, she's the primary carer of 2 children with special needs. Becca is facing a maximum penalty of 20 years behind bars. Estelle Greeping, 7 News.
The founder of outdoor clothing company Patagonia is giving away the entire business to help protect the planet. Yvonne Chouinard started the company in the 1970s, growing it to a $3.5 billion business. Now he's pledged to transfer ownership to a trust and non-profit organisation that'll use all profits to tackle climate change. Melbourne is marking a tourism milestone with a cruise ship tonight docked at Station Pier for the first time in almost 3 years. The city now welcoming a rise in visitors arriving by sea and by air.
Cruising into Station Pier, the Coral Princess bore a love letter to Melbourne. The cruise ship, the first to dock in Victoria since March 2020. This morning, reuniting loved ones.
It's lovely, really. We're sisters, so 3 years is a long time.
Oh, it's a home away from home. It's fantastic cruise life.
And reigniting Melbourne's tourism industry, unloading 2,500 passengers to explore the city.
We expect in normal years, like the one ahead of us, 300,000 passengers to come via cruise ships. That's bigger than the size of Geelong, if you can imagine, and the stimulus is billions of dollars.
By sea and by air, as it prepares for the start of the school holidays tomorrow, Melbourne Airport's also helping a record number of people to visit Victoria. Demand from the states particularly great.
United has announced double daily services from the end of October, so we're thrilled that we're going to have a daily Los Angeles and a daily San Francisco.
Mask rules have eased on planes, but COVID protocols are still in place on cruise ships. Passengers must test negative prior to setting sail, and isolation rules apply to anyone who contracts COVID while at sea.
On board, it feels almost the same as it would have pre-COVID. It's a fantastic experience. Everything's open.
Jodie Lee, 7 News.
Victoria's love affair with big utes is delivering a hidden sting. We'll have the details next. Also, a truck driver escapes a freeway inferno. Moreland Council set for a name change. And after sport, help for parents to keep children busy when school holidays kick off next week. Notorious Demons fan Hayden Burbank has been arrested and his home and business raided. Police executed search warrants at the Morris Jones Bar in Chapel Street and a house in Toorak, seizing prescription medication. Mr Burbank was released pending further inquiries. He made headlines last year when he snuck into WA for the grand final in breach of COVID rules and was jailed for 3 months. The Prime Minister has abandoned the idea of an Australia Day referendum on an Indigenous voice to Parliament. After consulting Indigenous leaders, it's now expected to happen after June next year.
Early next year, I think that's probably a bit early, maybe, the middle of the year.
The new time frame will give at least 6 months of national debate on the issue. A truck erupted in flames and exploded on an Adelaide freeway in the morning peak. The driver managed to climb out of the cabin just as the fire took hold.
Oil line or something was blown and it spilled over the motor and she's gone kaput.
No one was injured, but the prime mover was destroyed. New research shows Australia's vehicle emissions are falling, but not nearly as much as expected. Although electric vehicle sales are growing, big utes and SUVs are still king of the road.
Electric vehicles are slowly growing in popularity in Australia, but they're not taking off at the same rate as big fuel-guzzling utes and SUVs.
These two trends are really wiping one another out in terms of our emissions performance as a nation.
A new report by the National Transport Commission shows Australia's vehicle emissions dropped just 2% last year.
It's really important that we think about tackling emissions from transport because they're actually the second biggest share of Australia's total emissions.
10 years ago, SUVs accounted for just a quarter of cars sold in Australia. Today, they make up half. In contrast, small vehicles have gone from 1 in 4 sales to just 1 in 10. Electric cars have tripled over the same period, but still only make up 0.23% of the market. Experts say poor charging infrastructure and cost are big factors.
We really need to see both of those things improving before people will actually adopt an EV in Australia.
Australia is one of the only developed countries that doesn't have a vehicle emissions standard. It means there's no incentive for manufacturers to send cleaner, greener models our way.
Big auto manufacturers sold over 1 million new cars into the Australian market last year, and most of those were dirtier and less efficient than the ones that they sell overseas.
We are still a little bit away from proper EV adoption here.
Christy Cooper, 7 News.
A Melbourne council has been given the green light to change its name, ending its association with a Jamaican slave plantation. Moreland City Council will officially become Marybeck on September 26th after Victoria's Governor in Council approved the change. The Indigenous name means rocky country. $500,000 will be spent upgrading signage in the area. Sport is next with Tim Watson. And Tim, the teams are in. Now the countdown's on to the preliminary final.
Mitch, it's a tense time of the year. We're going to hear from all the coaches ahead of a massive weekend of footy, with the Magpies daring to dream as they head into Saturday's prelim fit and raring to go. Will it be a clash of the coaches when Geelong meet Brisbane tomorrow night? The Lions eyeing an extended stay in Melbourne. We'll have the exclusive details. And football's young superstar stuns again in Europe. Welcome back. Craig McRae admits he's daring to dream as his side prepares for the biggest game of his short coaching career. The Pies had their final training run this morning and the coach declared his side is fit and firing ahead of Saturday's prelim final against Sydney.
Collingwood fans aren't the only ones getting caught up in the Flag Pies hysteria.
I catch myself all the time thinking what if, and you start thinking forward and what could be, and that's just a natural human behaviour.
Jordan De Goey got through the full week despite nursing a shoulder niggle. Braden Maynard also trained after leaving the track early on Tuesday. The coach hosed down concerns surrounding Nick Dacos, who received treatment on his calf.
I think if we report on every little bit that we've been worked on, I think we'll be in trouble. But no, everyone's fit and well and ready to go.
Jack Ginnivan was the target of a hostile crowd during the Pies' last game in Sydney. McRae hopes that won't happen again.
I'd like to think that it's not the case. That we respect our. I'm not a booer. I'm just I respect my people around us.
The Pies are expecting a big response from Lance Franklin after the superstar was held goalless against Melbourne.
He's a star of the game, legend of the game, and we're just playing for his best.
The Swans also backing Buddy to bounce back.
Knowing Bud and the competitor he is, you almost just don't need to worry about him because he's priming himself for a big one.
Josh Kennedy's hopes of making a miraculous return are officially over, the 34-year-old tweaking his hamstring again. Natalie Yanides, 7 News.
Geelong is hoping another milestone for Joel Selwood can help them overcome a recent run of preliminary final failures. The Cats coach was on the front foot today as he prepares to go head-to-head with an old foe.
About to coach his 8th prelim final, Chris Scott isn't buying into his previous 2-5 record.
The last thing I want to do is sound condescending because I get it. We just have different jobs. We're playing different games.
Or Geelong's slow starts in September.
It might be the most obvious thing in footy. In a big game, let's start well. Sweet.
Front of mind, preparing for just their second game in 27 days. Jake Kolodjasny given the green light. Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins fit to play after quiet weeks. Hawkins to jump into equal 4th for finals played as Joel Selwood draws level with Michael Tuck for the most ever.
I think it's an amazing performance for anyone to play one AFL game, then to play 39 AFL games, but to play 39 finals, it's extraordinary.
The skipper and his midfield out to stop Lachie Neale.
He's had a great season. I would expect he'll win the Brownlow.
Scott keen to avoid a repeat of last year's Lions spray.
No, I don't think so. Depends whether Fags abuses me or not.
As Fagan and his Lions anticipate a dogfight,
the stakes are high and
It's nothing to do with whether we like each other or not. It's what we're after.
Brisbane jetting in this afternoon, 2 years on from a prelim nightmare against the Cats.
They've talked about that a little bit this week, about almost that they took it a little bit for granted.
Mitch Cleary, 7 News.
There's been a potential breakthrough in Tasmania's push for an AFL team. Tom Brown joins us from the MCG. And Tom, a decision could be made within weeks.
Tim, on Monday, it's obviously grand final week. It could be the start of a significant period for this push for a Tasmanian team. So far, the clubs, which have to vote, haven't had any detailed information, particularly financial information, on a team. That'll change on Monday. The clubs will meet post-Brownlow. The AFL will present the clubs with some detailed information they can take back to their boards for consultation next week. We could have a vote on Tasmania as soon as the week now following the grand final. That's significant that they will finally now get some detailed information. Meantime, tonight, I can reveal the Brisbane Lions, if they make the grand final, will have an unusual preparation. Players planning and will go to the Brownlow in Melbourne, albeit in a separate room due to COVID on Sunday night. It means the players who arrive today will be here for the best part of 4 days. If they make the grand final, would go back to Brisbane, then come back again next week. But the players wanted to go to the Brownlow here in Melbourne. The club doesn't have any issues, given they won't miss any amount of training. And just finally tonight, Tim, a significant story. Liam Jones, who stepped out of football due to his COVID vaccination status, will go to the Bulldogs. Now, Carlton's compensation will depend on the amount of money he gets paid and the length of that contract. It's not signed yet, but I don't think that compensation will be any better than a third-round pick. But Jones, who stepped out of footy due to the COVID vaccination protocols, will make a return to the Bulldogs. Tim?
Thanks, Tom. World football's hottest young talent continues to amaze. McCarthy FC booked its spot in the Australia Cup final with a 5-2 win over the Oakley Cannons, but not before Oakley made history, subbing on a very, very young goalkeeper. 13-year-old Umar Abili is now the youngest player to ever compete in the competition. The Rams will take on Sydney FC in the final. Anthony Hudson would say he's only 13. He'd say
he's only 13.
13. And don't forget, the front bar tonight at 8:30, the special guest, former Cats Premiership star Stevie J. That will be a lot of fun.
Entertaining as always. Thank you, Tim. Melbourne is set to come alive these school holidays with the return of a few family favourites. Some of the city's biggest attractions will be on show to keep children entertained.
Now that school is almost out, kids and parents are on the hunt for some holiday fun, and there's plenty of it.
We're expecting the city to absolutely pop during the school holidays.
From the breathtaking multi-sensory experience at the Melbourne Museum, to this interactive Lego exhibit, and a little further out, a Sesame Street Circus spectacular at Cheltenham. There are lots of free activities on offer too. The long-awaited Melbourne Royal Show will make its return from September 22.
We can't wait to see thousands of kids running through the gates and seeing their smiles on their faces.
More than 1 million colourful bulbs are already on show for the popular Tessela Tulip Festival, and for animal lovers, Melbourne, Healesville and Werribee Zoos also offering free admission for kids under 16.
We're putting on free art classes and workshops. There are fashion design classes, screen printing classes and maker classes.
For teens, there's street art graffiti workshops running all school holidays in this West Melbourne laneway to coax them off the tech.
Just to get outside, do something super cool, it's a lot of fun.
Rochelle Brown, 7 News.
Super cool indeed. Jane is next with the forecast. And Jane, how is it looking tomorrow?
Well, Mitch, there is a big burst of wet weather in the afternoon. Now, I'll show you what that means for the footy next.
Tonight on the latest from 7 News, we'll take you to our royal team in key positions across London. The Queen lying in state. Her Majesty's funeral plans being fine-tuned right now. Government planes ready to take off with the Australians invited. Every development when it happens live after the front bar.
Hello again. There was the sound of rain on the roof last night. It generally brought 3 to 8 millimetres across town. 8 in the city, 9 in Geelong. That cleared out during the morning. We rose back up to 17 on a generally dry day. Cloud for much of it, occasional sunny breaks. Here's the rain as it passed through, widespread coming down from the northwest. So the falls were heavier on the northern slopes of the ranges. By morning, not much left except widespread cloud, thickest over northeast Victoria. So East Gippsland and the Mallee reached 20. It was 18 in Portland and Warrnambool. But Wodonga and Wangaratta just 12 and 13. Drizzly under grey, low and foggy cloud with a fast-running Ovens River. This pattern is thanks to a sliding cold front. It's large though, so it brings rain and thunderstorms right up into southern Queensland. Today is just the first part. There is more to come, controlled by a low over the Bight. We'll see wave after wave of wet weather as each of the associated troughs or fronts moves through. Tomorrow begins generally dry, but the next wave is in full effect by the afternoon with widespread wet weather. This also brings colder air with alpine snow developing. We repeat on Saturday, generally dry, then another wave of wet weather. And then again on Sunday, lasting into Monday too. However, by late Monday, it is all over for this weather system. But the ground is already soaked and this new rain is likely to bring river rises once again. And that leads to the risk of minor flooding in these catchments. Up in the Alps, there was a bit of fresh snow earlier in the week. All the majors are still up around the metre mark, so that is great for mid-September. After we get through this bit of rain, the forecast is looking fabulous. Cold air arrives on Friday night, and by the end of Monday, 40 to 80 centimetres is likely. Around the nation tomorrow, after a wet night, sunshine does return to Sydney. Canberra dry for much of the day before late showers and storms. In Hobart and Adelaide, lots of showers passing through, dry in Perth. To Victoria, generally dry at first, then widespread showers, the risk of thunderstorms, all spreading eastwards, tending to persistent rain at times, particularly near the ranges. Snow developing in the Alps as colder air moves through. So closer in the morning is quite dry. The afternoon is wet. We've got showers tending to persistent rain, even the slight risk of a thunderstorm in that. However, look how rapidly it clears up during the evening hours. By 9 or 10 p.m, there is nothing left. So conditions could be quite wet at the start of the footy. It'll get better but colder as the game goes on. On the 8-day outlook, Saturday also begins quite dry. Then the next burst arrives. It's just 15. Sunday, showers redeveloping again. They last into Monday, but we'll have some 20s as we go through next week and only a little bit of wet weather overnight. So 17 tomorrow, dry at first, but then it is a wet afternoon. It turns colder at night. But it should actually dry up as the footy goes on, so hopefully good for the Cats, maybe, Mitch.
The G's got the best drained ground in the world.
Indeed, they'll have all that rain tomorrow, then it'll be fine tomorrow night.
Good on you, Jane. Thanks very much. And that's the way it is this Thursday, the 15th of September. Thanks for your company. For now, from the 7 News team, good night.